could you tell the story from the very start again? I think I have an idea what's going on.
Of course. Here it goes, guys.
It all started at a dinner party where Miss White made a chocolate cake and brought it to the dining room. She was frustrated that everyone always finishes the chocolate cake in one night and are never at all grateful. Could it be enough to sabotage her own masterpiece? Meanwhile, Colonel Mustard was very excited because he loves chocolate cake. Perhaps too excited? Now, Miss Scarlet had been out in other events as usual, but arrived just in time and was very, very hungry. And oh, Mrs. Peacock, always scheming in her diary. She's never up to any good. Then you have Mr. Green, who is angry at Miss White because she forgot their 3-month anniversary. Maybe even angry enough for revenge? They were all ready to sit for the delicious meal, when suddenly...
Who did it, you may ask? This was the work of 2 individuals, none other than Mrs. Peacock and Miss Scarlet.
Not true.
All Mrs. Peacock would have to do is turn off the light. Miss Scarlet would run out the door and receive the cake from Mrs. Peacock through the window. The dogs would have smelled the cake and come running, knocking the chair over and causing the loud crashing sound. Then Miss Scarlet would have to drop the cake in the commotion and brought back the empty plate and placed it on the table before anyone noticed. Thus, why Miss Scarlet was by the door.
Brilliant, right?
That's not true. According to my card, Miss Scarlet was trying to get the door open to see what had caused the crash, but it was locked. I said the cat did it.
Seriously, Olivia?
What? They love chocolate cake. Yes, they do.
By the way, John, it wasn't Mrs. Peacock who switched off the light. My clue says Mrs. Peacock was pushed into the light. Guys, it was obviously Colonel Mustard.
Now, Victoria, why would I steal the cake from you kids?
I don't know how, but he's the least suspicious, so it must be him.
My clue. It says Colonel Mustard and Miss Scarlet were too far from the light to have switched it off.
Okay then, so what about Miss White? She was closest to Mrs. Peacock, and she made the cake, so she's the last one anyone would suspect.
Hey now, what about Mr. Green? I think he conveniently fell so he would look like a victim.
Now, kids, this is just a game. And Karina, personally, I agree with John on this one.
Mr. Green was further from the window than Miss White was. She was the closest out of all of the remaining suspects to Mrs. Peacock. Miss White could have pushed her into the light, stumbling into Mr. Green, and then thrown out the cake to the dogs.
Wait. Hold on, you guys. Something's not right. Look, I'll prove it to you guys. I'll read you the clue, and it says... Okay, look at this. The cake wasn't thrown out the window.
Well, that was an interesting turn of events. Culprit, would you mind identifying yourself and tell us what really happened?
Well...
You?
Just kidding.
Kids, think about it. This means Mr. Green doesn't have an alibi. If he was the farthest from the window, that means he was the closest to the cake.
The question is, if Miss White didn't stumble into Mr. Green on her way to the cake out, then how did Mr. Green fall?
Well, maybe he fell on purpose to somehow hide the cake.
Finally, you guys are getting somewhere.
Aha! So it was you.
It worked out perfectly that none of you got the final clue until now.
Why do you think I pretended it was such a useless clue?
Okay, we get it. But if the cake wasn't thrown out the window, what did you do with it?
Here's what happened. Mr. Green, in fury that Miss White had forgotten their 3-month anniversary, devised a plan to get back at her. So he threw a bone out the window to the dogs to cause the crash and threw himself hard on the ground under the table.
incredibly complex plan for just a cake.
Well, I thought it was really creative, Lydia.
I did too.
Thank you, guys. And now for cake. For the winner and everybody else.
All right.